This video is going through 16.3, preparing a balance sheet. There's one learning objective. You need to be able to prepare a balance sheet for a business organized as a corporation. So first, they're just showing us the balance sheet information that we would find on a trial balance. Now they're going to show us the first part of our balance sheet. So remember, anytime that we are creating a report, we are going to start with our heading, and our heading is going to answer the three questions of who, what, and when. Notice on the balance sheet, our when is going to be a specific date. So we are showing the balance in the accounts on December 31st. Our first section then of our balance sheet is going to be our current assets section. Remember, current assets are anything that we are going to use up or turn into cash within a year. So all of those current assets are going to be listed. Notice that there is accounts receivable, and it's over here in the far left column. And then underneath accounts receivable it says less allowance for uncollectible accounts. This allowance for uncollectible accounts is a contra account to accounts receivable. Now, hopefully you remember that a contra account means that it's the opposite of that asset account, accounts receivable. It is going to decrease accounts receivable. So that is why we are taking accounts receivable minus that allowance for uncollectible to get that balance. This then is our book value of accounts receivable. And then we are listing the rest of our current assets. And then we are going to add up those current assets. And here is our total listed here. Notice the label is total current assets. Next, we're going to put in our plant assets. And for both, we have really two plant assets, our office equipment and our store equipment. And both of those have contra accounts. Our contra account to office equipment is accumulated depreciation office equipment, and our contra account to store equipment is accumulated depreciation store equipment. So both of those, we need to find the book value of those two accounts. So we are going to take our office equipment minus the depreciation to get our book value. Same thing with our store equipment. We're going to take our balance of our store equipment minus the accumulated depreciation to get our book value. We're going to add those two together then to get our total plant assets. And then we're going to add our current assets plus our plant assets to get our total assets. Next, we're going to look at our liabilities section of our balance sheet. Liabilities are going to be classified according to the length of time until they are due. Liabilities that are due within a short period of time, usually within a year, those are going to be called our current liabilities. Liabilities that are owed for more than a year are going to be called our long-term liabilities. So this is a lot like our current assets and our plant assets, except now we're looking at liabilities. So liabilities due within a year are current. Liabilities that are going to be owed for longer than a year are long-term liabilities. So on our on our balance sheet, we are going to list our liabilities, and we're going to list all of our current liabilities. If you notice in this example, we have no long-term liabilities, so we don't have to worry about that here. We're going to list all of our current, we're going to add them up, and we're going to list that as our total liabilities. Okay, next we have our stockholders equity section of our balance sheet. Now, our stockholders equity section, we are going to list our capital stock and our retained earnings. We add those two together to get our total stockholders equity. Then we need to take our total stockholders equity plus our total liabilities to get our total liabilities plus stockholders equity. This number here needs to equal our total assets. If those two numbers do not equal, that tells us that we have an error somewhere. This is just showing us then our completed balance sheet. Up at the top, we have our assets, then we have our liabilities and our stockholders' equity. We have our total assets that is then equal to our total liabilities plus stockholders' equity. Now, a supporting schedule for a balance sheet, this is going to be a report that's prepared to give details about an item on a principal financial statement. That is a supporting schedule. So a supporting schedule is sometimes referred to as a supplementary report or an exhibit. Number 1, how does 3 Green classify its assets? We are going to, with 3 Green, we are going to have current assets and we're going to have plant assets. Current assets are anything we are going to use up or turn into cash within a year. Plant assets are assets we are going to hold on to for longer than a year. Number 2, what 3 items are listed on the balance sheet for an account having a related contra asset account? First, we need to list the balance of the asset account. Then we need to list the balance of the contra asset account. And then we need to list the book value. The book value is just the difference between those two. Number 3, what is an example of a long-term liability? Now, we did not go over this in the PowerPoint, so you would have actually had to read the section to be able to answer this question. A mortgage payable would be a perfect example of a long-term liability. It's something that we owe for longer than a year. Mortgage is usually going to be a 15 or a 30-year loan. Number 4, where are the amounts obtained for the stockholders' equity section of the balance sheet? This is a great question that I did not go over during the PowerPoint. You do need to know where to find the information that goes in our stockholders' equity section. So this is going to come from our statement of stockholders' equity. So you do need to have that statement of stockholders' equity available to be able to complete your balance sheet. This is really important because if you do not get these numbers off of the statement of stockholders' equity, it will not be correct and your assets will not equal your liabilities plus owner's equity. Number 5, what are 2 supporting schedules that might accompany a balance sheet? Now, we talked about what a supporting schedule is, but we did not talk about examples that would go with a balance sheet. So again, this is something that you would have needed to read to be able to answer. So 2 examples would be the schedule of accounts payable and the schedule of accounts receivable. Those 2 things, the schedule of accounts payable is going to show the accounts that we owe money to and how much we owe to each account. The other side of that, schedule of accounts receivable is going to show the accounts that owe us money and the amount that they owe us. That is the end of 16.3 lecture.